Hello, everybody. Welcome to War Pony Tactical. It's Rut and Javier here today for another great show.
These are always exciting. Now, again, just like we did with the last video, this is, but not as often. This one here is 3.2. So again, after taking y'all's feedback, we were like, hey, we need to improve these videos. So this is our second attempt on today's topic. Again, remember, we are talking about the modular chassis pistols, these guns that have a serialized chassis that comes out and you're able to go ahead and build from the ground up. And today's focus is going to be on
the Springfield Echelon.
Exactly. We have the Springfield Echelon, which was brought out in 2023 after Springfield decided that they wanted to get into the same market as SIG and offer something that was, I guess you can say, better than the XD. I've got some people that are huge fans of the Springfield XD line. But the thing is, though, is that there just have been a number of issues with that particular lineup. Not really with functionality as far as being reliable or anything like that, but, just an uncomfortable shoot. And so Springfield decided to come out with something in this brand new market. And this is just like what you'll see in the SIG P320 and the 365 is you've got this takedown lever. And when you take it apart, as you can see inside, similar, if you just take the takedown lever out and then your central operating group, not your fire control unit.
The COG, they got a different name for it.
Got to have a different name so to make sure that people don't get things mixed up when they make their purchases. But yeah, you've got a very identical looking situation like we did with the SIG P320. But like I said, it's known as the central operating group. So that's going to really be the focus today with the Springfield Echelon. And Rhett and I both own one of these. So again, we're talking from firsthand experience. I really kind of went overboard just because I happened to find one on a great deal. Rhett has the factory 4.0 compact. This is probably the most popular version of the Springfield Echelon out on the market right now. I just happened to come across a guy who was looking to trade in for a rifle, and he put one of his Echelons up on the market in order to make that happen. And I got the 4.5 comped. And of course, then I am not an all black gun guy kind of guy, so I had to go ahead and take mine, get midnight bronze, OD green grip, and so mine's a little bit more colorful and stuff like that. But I really wanted it to match my War Pony rifle, so it's kind of like matching your purse to the shoes. You go and make sure that everything looks purdy out there. And again, like I've said before, if you
are kind of bougie,
right? I am a little bit bougie, but the thing is, though, is that if you like what you carry and you're proud of it, you're more likely to go ahead and get out on the range and put it to the test and practice with it. Right. So that's exactly what I've done. Now, like we mentioned, the first thing we want to talk about, obviously, is probably what we say are probably similarities here between the SIG P320 and the Springfield Echelon, and that is that the takedown on these are pretty identical. As far as the takedown lever, as I mentioned already.
No tools required.
No tools required. And I think that's kind of what Springfield's going for, is they want to make sure that when they talked about what they needed to do to create this market was to create a pistol that was very simplistic in its upkeep and its ability to be upgraded or modified, just like the SIG 320 and 365. Now, I did see on their website when they talk about all the things they wanted to accomplish, like we mentioned in the SIG 320 video, the situation with misfires and it being attributed possibly to the trigger in the sear situation. That was one of the key markers. If you look at the bullet points of what Springfield said, what we need to do in making this pistol, they were like, the trigger and the sear need to be like separate components, not like dependent on each other. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm as versed in the gun world to speak on that, but apparently they accomplished it. And we'll see some of those differences today when we talk about this Echelon. But Rudd, what's like the first thing you notice?
Well, actually, the 320 don't have any external safeties, and this itself doesn't have an external safety. Except like Glock, they put the safety in the trigger a little bit, right, which is fine, and it shoots. It doesn't have any effect on the trigger, other than obviously it's a safety. But I think, to me though, after shooting several hundred rounds, it kind of it gets in my way actually.
You know, when I go to put my hand on the pistol and I get my finger in that trigger well and rubbing across that, sometimes I'm just not a huge fan.
Right.
But I see why it's there. I see why it's there. And, you know, you can find some variants of this pistol, because you got to remember, too, that this was one of the ones that Springfield wanted to introduce to the law enforcement world and to the military, whether it be here in the United States or outside. And one of the requirements for that is external safeties. And so there are variants for this pistol where you, just like standard 1911s and other, you know, polymer guns that have external safeties, where you'll have that safety selector on the back end. There is an option with the Echelon to do that. But a lot of people are familiar with the Glock external safety on the trigger, and they went ahead and I'm not 100% sure, but that's probably one of the things that they were like, hey, that might be that situation between the sear and the misfires and stuff like that. If we add this one component that people are already familiar with, then we can definitely answer one of those questions.
Plus, it keeps them from having to put an external safety on it. I mean, it is definitely a safety. I tried to fire it without it, and you can't do it.
Yeah, I've got mine racked. If I get on the outside of this thing and I try and pull down on it, it is not going anywhere. So yeah, definitely like that. Now, of course, being left-handed shooters, or, you know, me being a left-handed shooter and being very open to that idea, Springfield did make a lot of components on this particular pistol to be ambidextrous. As you can probably tell, they're right here. You've got this little shelf here, and for most people who are right-handed shooters, if you're gripping your gun and you're one of those people that like to go ahead and stick maybe your pointer finger or your thumb sits high up to brace on the trigger guard, you've got this little thumb rest or point index finger rest that you can go ahead and rest your finger on. Some people really like that, because you go ahead and get your finger on there, and as you are pointing the gun, kind of where your finger is pointing, where your thumb is pointing, you've kind of got this immediate reference on to shoot. But sometimes some people kind of put their fingers in the wrong spot and they end up getting a little thumb rash because of the slide as it's cycling and so forth. But on the Springfield, they have some texturing and a little shelf on both sides to accomplish that. So you got this opportunity to kind of, again, I love it when you can reach for a pistol in the dark, and as you put your hands on it, there are
it directs you to where to put your hand.
Exactly.
For your grip.
Where does your hand need to go? And so that's just one of the things I happen to like. Now,
speaking of the trigger, though, I really like the trigger pull itself, and it has a very short reset. I mean, it's right there, you know, very short. And the trigger pull itself, and this is stock OEM, and it's probably 4 pounds or less.
Yeah, so
very nice trigger pull.
Another thing I'm kind of noticing on the market is, instead of giving exact numbers on trigger pull,
they're giving
a range.
Right,
because,
right.
Yeah,
4 to 5 pounds.
So yeah, so on the Springfield, from their website, they say 4 to 5 pound trigger pull. But every one that I've fired has been right there around that 4 pound mark.
Right.
And I really like that. I super enjoy that. Very common too with the European style shooting on polymers. You can see that your trigger guard is curved and textured on the outside, because that grip of being able to go ahead and get a finger, again, if you've got your thumb on that pedal in there and you want to wrap your hand around, you've got some aggressive texturing again to kind of steady up that pistol on your shot. And so I'm a huge fan of that as well. The grip, when we talk about modularity, you can go ahead and purchase this grip in different colors along with different sizes. However, one of the things that they went ahead and included was that you do have an adjustable back strap, no matter what size you get. And so, as you can see here on mine, I've got the OD green grip, but my back strap is black. One, just because, again, I got those bougie color schemes going on. But it's something that you can go ahead and, no matter if you have a preference for the small, medium, or large size grip, you can also still change out this back strap.
And it just takes the small tool that inserts right in here, and that snaps off, and you slide the other one in.
Yeah.
And it's got a little guide rod that goes, you can't
misplace it.
Right.
You can't misplace it.
Can't do it wrong.
And it just is such a perfect fit. You do not feel where it transitions from the grip to that back strap.
You can't even see it, really.
You can't see it. You can't feel it. And that was actually one of the things when I first got this out of the box, and I was looking to see if there was the adjustable backstrap. For a moment there, I thought maybe I was getting a cheaper model, because when you talk about buying something off the shelf and things like that, sometimes if you're not versed in pistols or firearms, altogether, you see a gun, you see the price, and you're like, oh man, I'm getting this great deal on this gun. And then you get home and you realize, oh, it was cheaper because I don't have the night sights. Right. I didn't get the extra mags. This is running with or without a back strap, different things like that. Or it does a lot of times. You'll see in some gun markets where not having an external safety actually costs you more than an external safety. So again,
and that's also big when you're buying aftermarket grips, because does it have the safety or not?
Exactly.
Have the safety?
And so this was one of those deals where I was like, man, it's not on there. And then of course I open the box and it's got the extra back straps in there. And after just checking out a quick video and looking at the owner's manual, realize that it's real simple. Now you do not necessarily need a tool, but it's easier with the tool to change out that back strap. I have not enjoyed taking the back strap off without it. So, because there is having to press down on that, you're going to tear a nail or something like that. And you know how dainty my nails can be.
That's just one of those deals too, that when you do find the one you like, you shouldn't have to switch it out much.
Right. Most people ask me, what's with the back strap? Why do we need to get that changed out? And especially if you get a grip size that you like. And one of the things you need to think about is as you grip your gun, everyone's got different size hands. As you hold your gun and you put your finger on the trigger, is your trigger finger too far in? Is it not enough in there? Are you just on the tip of your finger? And adjusting that back strap, either going larger and pulling your hand further away from the trigger, or narrowing it and getting a smaller back strap to give you more of your finger into that trigger well, is the reason why you want to be interested in getting a gun with an adjustable back strap.
To me, that affects your accuracy more than anything, because if you're over in there and it's not in the correct place on your finger, you have a tendency to pull not straight back.
Exactly. Probably number one with novice shooters, the number one, well, I say there's two things that I think novice shooters,
number one,
there's number one and there's number two. I think they kind of coincide with each other. The two most common mistakes when firing a gun for novice shooters is one, anticipating the recoil.
Right.
And so they kind of jump back and flinch on that. But the other thing too is really hammering down that trigger and pushing the gun away from them. So me being a left-handed shooter, if I'm not, running my drills, if I go to push, I'm going to shoot down into the right.
Right. Most right-handed shooters are going to be down to the left.
Exactly.
Because they're pulling it so hard.
And then if I'm not familiar with the recoil and the sound of the gun going off, you may tend to jump up, and that's going to put you up a little bit. So that's just one of those things that if you get your finger in the right position, then you're less likely to have some of those issues. And that's where that back strap comes into place. Do I want a narrow grip to get more of my finger in there, or do I want a wider grip to kind of take my finger out of that? The last thing there's a couple things, maybe two things left on this. One, you do have your standard pick rail up front, and that's real nice. You have about 4 notches on there, which means that you can pick different light options, laser options. If you're into dry fire exercises, getting a Mantis dry fire laser to practice with, or other things that are on the market, can be easily and readily put on to that pick rail. So you kind of have the opportunity to mess around and create different variants of that. The last part of this, though, is going to be that mag release. And what's great for some and a complaint for others is that it is an ambidextrous, always mag release.
Completely ambi.
Yeah, it's completely ambi. Whether you are left-handed or right-handed, you do not need to switch this around like you do on the P320. Already right off the bat, you can either click it from one side or the other side, and you are going to drop the magazine. You'll be able to notice that on the magazine itself. Most of the time, you'll have a notch on one side of the magazine, and that is where it locks it into place. However, on your Springfield Echelon mags, you can see the notch is in the dead center of the front of the mag. And so that magazine release is up front. Now, while that seems good in theory and in play here, the problem is that engaging the mag release, you really have to hammer down because you've got to clear a good portion of that to get down on there to release the magazine. The other thing too that I am not a huge fan when it comes to that is,
what else are you not a huge fan of?
You stick this in your holster, and I just remember like being a left-handed shooter. I used to carry a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0. My mag release, I didn't know how to switch it around when I first got it, so it was for a right-handed shooter.
Right.
But sitting on my left-hand side, every time the Kydex would press up against that, I would just be sitting around or something like that, and all of a sudden my magazine would fall out. And so I really haven't worn the Echelon very long to see if that was going to be an issue. But it's one of those deals where having to engage that magazine release real heavy on either side has kind of slowed down the mag changes. So, it's one of those things that I'm glad that I can engage this from either side. I'm sad that the system is a little finicky in how far you have to depress the magazine release to make that happen. And so if you're familiar with like carrying like a 1911 or something like that, it's one of those things that you can easily engage really quickly. But here on this one, you do have to kind of press down a little bit. Now, again, not necessarily the worst thing in the world.
Right.
But definitely if you're looking for making modifications on those real minor points to get something that you absolutely love, that is definitely something to take a look at.
Another thing I really like about it on the slide, moving along to the slide, is the very aggressive serrations they have there, and you can from front or back, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the slide serrations on this particular gun are really deep, and you've got them in the front and in the back. If you're familiar with like the 1911, you remember like usually your slide serrations are only in the back of the pistol, so you kind of had to do like in the movies, and you'd be back here like cha-cha. Which when you talk to real shooters, they're like that's the worst thing to do when you're going to go and rack it. But the thing is, when you talk about other pistols, especially now that people are really engaged in the optic ready, sometimes you don't want to put your hand here in the back and end up, greasing up the glass with all the oils on your hand, greasing up the glass on your optic. And so these front serrations are outstanding to go ahead and get your hands on it and being able to go ahead and get that taken care of. And there's obviously no,
it's one of the easier ones that I've, loaded from the front.
Oh yeah.
Or made ready from the front. I mean, that's very accessible.
Yeah, and so it's a great. And it just looks badass too.
It does.
It makes it look aggressive. It makes it look cool. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that. The
also along the slide, mine is the optic ready. Javier has the Swamp Fox on top of his.
Right.
So those are really nice.
Yeah. So different, and I think one of the biggest selling points for the Springfield Echelon is the Variable Integrated System, another acronym to go ahead and be familiar with, the VIS. Also kind of being called the Universal Key on the market. And what that is when you purchase any firearm that is optic ready, it usually comes with a footprint to go ahead and mount your optic onto it. And so you've got to make sure that you purchase a optic that matches with the slide. If not, there are options to go ahead and go out there and get conversion plates where you can go ahead and say, for instance, you have a pistol that's RMR ready footprint and the screws are in a particular spot for RMR, but you have an RMR SC or a Delta Point or something like that. You can go ahead and get a plate that'll fit into your pistol and exchange that. Now the problem with that is that rather than having your screws mount into your optic and directly onto the slide with lots of threads to go ahead and hold it in place, now you've got the plate being held in place, and your plate may be less than 1/8 of an inch thick or something along those lines, and now your optic is being mounted to that plate without very many screws or without much depth on the threads. And so you'll see a lot of people complain about losing zero because of that. What Springfield did is they went ahead and put in multiple footprints. I think there's like 8 footprints drilled into this slide. And then with your box, you get pins that go ahead and you put them, depending on what footprint you have and which optic you've got, you can put a combination of pins into the slide that, one, secure it into place, and then two, you can go ahead and drive whatever screws you have to match up with those various footprints and mount this directly to your slide. And so, super helpful. I think that's a game changer.
I do too. Make sure whatever optic you do get, most of them now are offering like 7 or 8 different sets of screws with each optic to make sure you get the right ones. Just make sure you get the ones for the Echelon. They're usually labeled pretty clearly.
But yeah, like I said, being able to go ahead and put essentially any optic onto this. The other thing too is they're all top screw mounted, so you'll be able to go ahead and mount directly from the top. Depending again on your weapon, there are several variants out there in different brands where you have to get from underneath to go ahead and put the screws in. And there's debates on whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, depending on where you're coming from. Most of the time, if you are putting in screws from underneath the slide, that usually means having to take something out in order to get in there to go ahead and do that. And again, if you're not comfortable with pulling those parts out and putting them back in just exactly how they're supposed to go, then that means mounting your optic is going to take some professional help necessary, and that's more money out of your pocket.
And you can just imagine a screw that you mount from underneath. If it backs out a little bit, it's
right.
rubbing metal to metal. And,
exactly. You risk running a misfire of some sort, running into some technical issue that could be a catastrophic failure, depending on what the situation is. But the ability to go ahead and see your screws up top and on top of that, they didn't just, like I said, they didn't just put the holes in there. They put mounting pegs in there, and a lot of your optics have some people call duck feet or something like that, where they've got pins that can sit down, they kind of stabilize it. And so with this, or they've got holes that already, you do it in the reverse. And so you've got that option here with this Springfield Echelon to accomplish that. So that's very nice.
If you don't want to use an optic, though, they do have some very nice factory sights on this thing. A big 0 for the front side and the U for the back ones.
Yeah.
So that lines up pretty good there.
I really like the U optic.
I like it a lot.
I like it. Well, I like the curved U optic. I don't like the Glock version of the squared off U.
Right.
I don't find my sight pictures quick. I love this round U because you just cradle that front, and I don't even think that they offer just a white pin. I think all of them have the tritium front. And so that's nice when you talk about price and making sure something that you don't have to upgrade later on.
So you don't have to.
Yeah,
put the aftermarket on there.
Yeah. Just a couple other things, like my particular version, they do offer a 4.5 inch barrel that is comped. And again, if you're unfamiliar with what comps will allow you to do, is remember all those gases that are coming out of the front of your weapon, by putting these comps up on the top end, it allows those gases to vent out. But gases venting up means that as you are getting that rise from the recoil, it's going to push gases up and keep the gun level. Is it going to do it 100%? No. But it's going to allow you to get back into your sight picture and on target a lot quicker. And so that is definitely and I didn't pay much more for this option. So it's one of those upgrades that you can probably get fairly simply. If you do decide to go ahead and just get a threaded barrel and put a comp on it, you're looking at a threaded barrel running you about anywhere from $150 to $200. The comps, most of them run around about $100. So I think for what I paid for this and what the factory prices are on this, the MSRP, if you get one off the shelf, going this route is a cheap route to help improve your shooting a lot. The last thing is kind of the in-between when we talk about the Central Operating Group, or the COG.
The COG.
This one.
The COG.
Yeah, this one works great. The only thing I don't like about the COG is the slide release. If you look on the SIG P320, the slide release stick out a little bit more, and they're a little bit more user-friendly as far as you can get your thumb on them really easily to go ahead and engage that slide release. It's great if you're in competition. I even got a Wilson Combat aftermarket slide release that was really easy to install, and that really helps me out on the 320. However, on this, the grip has some cutouts where that goes, and because of that, it kind of covers up this slide release, so it's a little harder to engage. And I've really got to hammer down on that. However, I think this is one of those things that, again, since Wilson Combat did make an aftermarket extended slide release for the 320, I would not be surprised to see something on the market soon for the same for the Springfield.
That's pretty much the only drawback. I really like this Echelon, but there's not a lot of aftermarket stuff out there right now. Pretty much, if you want to upgrade, there's lots of parts you can upgrade, but you're going to be buying them from Springfield.
Yeah. You know, the SIG P320 has been out, I think, since like 2017, 2015, somewhere around there. But the Echelon came out in 2023. Now the market is picking up. I've seen people from like Sharps Brothers and some other major manufacturers that do make parts and aren't in like the gun business per se, as far as the firearm, the serialized part of this, that are starting to make this. So you can find aftermarket parts, but you're not, at this point, you're not going to find them as readily available as the 320 or the 365. However, I think that that's just fine, because this out of the box is...
It addressed some of the issues that you had to upgrade on the 320.
Yeah, you don't need to, as aggressive as the slide is, you don't need to go ahead and get this milled or anything like that. The opportunity to buy one that's already comped, you don't need to go get that milled or anything like that. The footprint on the optics,
optic ready,
makes it, you know, outstanding. And then just the adjustable situation that everything you can do on the grip is already there. So out of the box, now for comfort purposes and shooter usability, yeah, I think everything's in the box and you can get going right away. When you start talking about wanting to make it tactical, then, you know, that's when you have to start looking into some aftermarket products, and that's where you might find yourself at a loss. But I don't see this going anywhere. I see this being the major competitor against the 320. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you saw like some law enforcement units that start phasing out the 320. One thing that I will tell you, though, is that I super 100% believe that the Springfield Armory Company is going to phase out the XDs and just move into the Echelon range. Like the XDs, like I said, there's nothing wrong with them, but when you talk about shooter usage or whatever, like I've had two XDs, the compact and the subcompact in the 40 Smith & Wesson and 357 SIG, and man, there is a lot of metal. When you talk about bore access, you've just got a lot of metal up top. So every time you're firing, all that metal coming back, there just was no way to compensate for the recoil on that with all that metal coming back at you. And so I think this is probably more in line with the future of Springfield and their pistols. I wouldn't even be surprised if you start seeing something modular in the Hellcat series where they start matching up with the 365, because the variants of the Hellcats that are coming out right now are starting to match up, where you're seeing longer barrels, extended grips, and things like that. But you still see that serial number on the grip, and so you're not able to change some things out. And so I don't know. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, after it's all said and done, after we get our reviews on all 7 of these pistols, we'll actually rate them, or I will rate them, and just from my point of view, I believe it's going to finish in the top 3. I really like my Echelon.
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely see that as being on both ends here. It's gotten to the point where it's almost. I'm almost curious if this is going to replace my 320. I think as more parts come out and be more available on the market.
Yeah, right now it's not.
Yeah.
But after they get more aftermarket parts for it, it could easily
just like
replace the 320.
SIG now markets those fire control units by themselves, where you can purchase those off the shelf and just buy that and build your gun from the ground up. Springfield isn't doing that yet. You can't just buy a cog and then build from the ground up. You still need to buy the pistol, and then you can start making modifications. So you're still looking at roughly about a $600 to $700 investment to get started on an Echelon. But like I said, when you think about everything that comes in the box, I think that is a great price and immediate modularity that's going to allow you to go ahead and get you into the game sooner than later.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Freedom. Here we go
we
again.
still got to remember, man. You know what? I think what we need to do is, so we got the War Pony flag. We need to just get a banner that it's defend,
educate,
defend, educate, train, defend,
train. There you go.
Stand free.
There you go. Live free.
There you go. Anyway, guys, again, if you like the video, go ahead and hit like and subscribe down below. Leave any comments down in the comments section. We love your feedback. It's allowed us to go ahead and, like I said, we've already been making changes to the video. Our next video will be featuring 2 guns as we start narrowing it down on these modular pistols. I think what you'll see is 2 more double videos and then 1 on the 365. When we do that 1 on the 365, we want to go ahead and share with you our overall experience with all these guns and give you a more big picture overview. And we will be looking for suggestions on what you want to see on this channel beyond the modular chassis pistols. Obviously, we're huge fans of the AR platform, and we'll probably be talking about that. We'll probably be hitting specific parts of that, though. We'll focus
the folders.
Like we recently just acquired a couple of folders. We now have probably the 2 best on the market: the Law Tactical and the Sylvan folder. And so we'll be going ahead and comparing those to share with you guys on this channel. But again, any suggestions, comments, or concerns that you want to go ahead and share with us, please do so. Like and subscribe, and God bless.
God bless America.